save using the code podcast at checkout. So let's start off with cholesterol, because many people might assume that high serum cholesterol over the age of 65 would increase the odds that you would die and not see your 100th birthday. That assumption would be wrong. In fact, having high total cholesterol over the age of 65 increases the odds, at least in this cohort of Swedish individuals, 44,000 of them, by the way, which is the largest study of its kind. I just want to mention the centenarian versus non-centenarian study looking at blood biomarkers and finding statistical associations between those biomarkers and the odds of reaching 100 years of age has never been done. This is a phenomenal study. I will link it below. I would encourage you to share this research with friends and family because this is really interesting. The scientists say, speaking on figure 3 here, we found that a higher total cholesterol level was associated with a higher chance of becoming a centenarian. Let me just read that one more time because I think this is going to take a lot of unlearning for some individuals. We found that a higher total cholesterol level was associated with a higher chance of becoming a centenarian, which stands in contrast to clinical guidelines regarding cholesterol levels, but is in line with previous studies showing that high total cholesterol is generally favorable for mortality in very old age. Now let's think about clinical guidelines because that's what these investigators wrote in this particular recollection of the facts. The clinical guidelines suggest that we should drop serum cholesterol, specifically LDL cholesterol, as low as possible because it's purportedly ostensibly atherogenic. It's going around and just attacking your blood vessels. It's highly oxidizable and so forth, which I would agree with the latter. We know that LDL cholesterol in particular, small dense LDL particles, if you eat a diet rich in linoleic acid and industrial seed oils, that might increase the propensity for LDL to become modified or oxidized, which is problematic. But it turns out that total cholesterol was strongly tethered to increased odds of reaching 100 years of age, at least in this cohort. Now, let's talk about glucose. The inverse is true for glucose. High serum glucose was strongly associated with not reaching 100 years of age. Now, this is not surprising, right? Because I just mentioned the underlying comorbidities and health issues were statistically higher in non-centenarians compared to centenarians are related to situations and clinical metabolic milieu and underlying metabolic health challenges that would suggest that glucose is driving the prevalence of peripheral vascular disease, heart disease, insulin resistance related complications linked with dementia and cancer, which were all higher in non-centenarians. So this is not really mentally challenging. However, what does challenge my biases here are the increased creatinine and how high levels of serum creatinine are linked with not reaching 100 years of age, at least in this cohort. Because we know that serum creatinine is a marker of muscle, as well as protein intake. So the more lean muscle mass you have, the probability that your creatinine will be higher suggests that in these individuals, muscle would not be as protective as we thought. However, it could be that elevated serum creatinine levels could be a reflection of underlying peripheral vascular disease and kidney issues. So I think there's more analysis to unearth this association with high serum creatinine and reduced odds of reaching 100 years of age. But I thought that was quite interesting. But let's talk about uric acid, because we know that uric acid, which again is a kidney-related biomarker that would suggest also a reflection of fructose intake and consumption and glucose intake. Now, there's a lot of problems linked with elevated uric acid. From the pathophysiologic, common sense standpoint, we think of gout when we see high uric acid. But there's also strong associations with high carbohydrate and fructose intake and high uric acid. And uric acid can be problematic. Many people have been speaking on the harms of uric acid as of late. Robert Lustig is one. We know David Perlmutter just wrote a book on uric acid, which I haven't yet read, but I would strongly consider you read that as well. So this could be a proxy of fructose and glucose intake, and it could also be associated with kidney disease. So we have two kidney biomarkers that when elevated would suggest that there's a lower chance that they'll live to be 100 years of age. So it's important to protect your kidneys. Your kidneys are a network of microvessels. And so if you have poor vessel health because you don't go in the sauna, you don't exercise, you have blood glucose and insulin surges all the time, logic would suggest that that's problematic and that will harm your kidneys, which would ultimately lower your odds of living and maximizing your health span and having exceptional longevity. Now let's focus on a liver enzyme known as GGT. Gamma-glutamyl transpeptidase. We've talked extensively about the importance of low GGT, how high GGT can mean one of two different things. Generally, it can also be linked with alcohol consumption, but let's focus on the most common reasons why GGT might be elevated. Well, as the name implies, gamma-glutamyl transpeptidase, the liver enzyme GGT